Welcome, and thanks for listening to Intrinsic Investigations. My name is Mr. Olivo, and I created this podcast because I've been fortunate enough over the last decade to see unique and thought-provoking projects happen in my classroom, and we wanted a place to showcase them. The true heart of this podcast lies not in the content discovered, but in exploring the personal stories of these young researchers as they journey through uncharted and unfamiliar intellectual terrain. By sharing their stories, we hope to normalize the challenges and frustrations that come with independent research, and also share those moments where students transcend the normal grind of the school day to discover concepts that range from the global to deeply personal. We will begin with a brief introduction to the student of focus, why they picked their topic, and discuss their growth over the course of the last year. It should be mentioned that the opinions expressed in this podcast in no way reflect the opinions of our school district, Bergen County Technical Schools and Special Services, or our school itself, Bergen County Technical High School, Teterboro, or the College Board. The work detailed in this podcast was most likely completed in AP Capstone, but this podcast is in no way affiliated with the College Board. On this episode, we're going to the movies. Is that the case?
Yeah.
You wanna introduce yourself, our guide to film, particularly horror film?
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Rebecca, and I'm a major at in fashion design at Bergen Tech. And
anything else you got? Anything else you got going on, or you just spend 24 hours of your life just being in fashion at Bergen Tech?
Well, I mean, I want to go into fashion. So.
Oh, you do want to go into fashion. What side of fashion do you want to go into?
Fashion business.
Okay, so yeah, Erin was just on 2 episodes ago. And I think she also wants to go into fashion business. Do the two of you ever talk about this?
Yeah, we do.
Like, what is that? What do those discussions sound like? Are you like, one day, I'm gonna be in New York City, heading a marketing firm focused on fashion, or like what?
Well, we talk more about right now, so internships. We might want to do something together.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're so practical. I'm talking about the dreams. You're talking about the practicality of it all. All right. Fashion, but this project has nothing to do with. We're not talking about The Devil Wears Prada or The Devil Wears Prada 2.
No, we're not.
We're not. Although I guess some people might consider those horror movies. Maybe.
Some of the characters.
Some of the characters. We are going to be talking about horror. Why are we talking about horror films? Like, what were you trying to find out with these?
So the point of my study was to find out how mental illnesses were portrayed in 3 horror movies. I picked The Babadook, The Night House, and Lights Out, just because those are more recently made horror movies that were produced in the past decade. Do
you feel like horror? Are you a fan of horror films?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Like even the classics.
Yes.
Yeah. Like we're going Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw, the slasher films. Do you feel like horror has gotten more psychological or focused on mental illness in recent history, or has it always been there in what you've seen?
I just feel like because horror movies are becoming more popular and they're becoming more made, that people are trying to go in different directions with it. So I feel like a lot of the ones are becoming psychological because people just tend to be more interested in those rather than slashers.
Okay.
Like I know there's some classics out there, but today there's more psychological.
Yeah. Do you feel like usually the mental illness is usually coupled with violence typically?
I feel like they use it a lot kind of to push the plot further, but the way that they portray it is kind of what I was analyzing because they don't portray it in a way that makes audiences fully understand what the mental illness is about.
Do you have a particular fave in terms of your horror, like supernatural ghost ones, or?
I don't like supernatural ghost ones.
Oh, you don't?
Actually, no.
No spooky ghosts. That's not.
I just don't find it realistic. I kind of do like these with mental illnesses because they feel more realistic, but these portrayals weren't really realistic. So.
Ooh, wow. All right, then I guess we got to get into that contradiction. So not the Ghostbusters who are listening would be very offended by the lack of realism there. So this is, so you're looking for like the real, you want realist elements in your horror. Yeah. You don't want some kind of surreal, supernatural kind of vibe. Do you have a particular fave?
Actually, my favorite is Lights Out.
Lights Out. Okay. Yeah. And that's part of the study.
Yeah, it is.
What were you trying to see with these horror movies? Like what was it was about mental illness, but
I only analyzed depression.
You only looked at depression.
Yeah, specifically.
And all 3 of these films have depression as a component of it.
Yeah.
You want to talk briefly about how depression manifests in each of these three movies, just so the audience can keep track, even if they've never seen them before?
Yeah, sure. So in The Babadook, the main character, her name is Amelia. She had depression, and kind of the story follows her and how she lives her daily life like with depression, and her son Samuel, because those are the only like two people that she like lives with that the story focuses around. In The Night House, the same thing. The main character, her name is Beth. She also is struggling with depression, and while she does have a friend that she interacts with a little bit throughout the movie, the story is mainly about her and like her life individually, since she doesn't live with anybody else. And
So she's lonely.
Oh yeah.
Is the loneliness a key part of that?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because like, okay, I'll get into that.
Yeah,
later.
we'll touch on all these things.
And in Lights Out, this one's a different setup, because the main character, her name is Rebecca, but her mother is the one with depression, and so her and her brother, Rebecca and her brother, they're the ones who interact with the mother who has depression, because her brother lives with their mother, so she just has to like interact with them like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Again, I've never seen these movies, but from what you just described, you got two of the characters with depression are moms.
Yeah.
They also happen to be moms. And then the third one, are they a mother as well? Is this all mothers with depression?
No, only two of them are mothers. The Night House, she's just by herself.
Okay. So she's just lonely.
Yeah.
Is it coincidental that all three characters happen to be women?
For my case, it was purely coincidental. Like, I wasn't trying to look for that, but that was something that I noticed in my research, that they were all female.
Okay. Just off the top of your dome as a horror movie expert, can you think of any horror movies where there's a prominent feature of a male character expressing depression?
Not depression, but in some of the studies that I looked at for like examples, they analyzed the movie Split. I don't know if you know what that is.
I think it's got James McAvoy, and it was...
I don't know what that is.
You don't know who James McAvoy is?
No.
He plays a mean Professor X.
Oh, yes, that guy.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's in other movies as well. But, yeah, he has dissociative personality disorder.
Yeah.
But it also makes him a superhuman in some ways, I think.
Like, kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
I guess. Yeah, in the movie Split, his name is Kevin. And so, yeah, he has, like, DID, and I don't know, the movie just focuses around that and how he acts towards other people. And that's the first one that comes to my head, but none really come to my mind about depression with males.
Oh, okay. All right. So you said DID, I said DPD, I guess. Are they both the same thing, or okay? I don't know if my terminology here was outdated. I'm trusting the youth of America on this one. So, well, before we get into this, I have a question that I feel like I should have asked at some point this year. What or who is a Babadook?
Okay, so in the Babadook is a supernatural creature.
Okay.
But it basically represents the main character, her depression. Like, it externalizes her depression. And so whenever she wouldn't be feeling good, that's when the Babadook would kind of like attack.
Oh, and it would attack people.
Yeah.
Was this a metaphor, or was it like she was actually attacking people? No,
it was a metaphor, and it doesn't state explicitly in the movie, but there's been interviews with the producer, and they've talked about how the Babadook is a metaphor, because whenever her depression would get really bad and the Babadook would attack people and like it would kill them, it kind of symbolizes her separation, or like people leaving her because of her depression.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now that sort of makes sense. Yeah, because in watching you talk about your work and seeing the film clips, I didn't realize that was the symbolism there. Okay, so let's kind of get into how you tried to analyze this. So you've got these three movies. You're doing a content analysis. I know I've had you now for a couple of years, but I know in 9th grade you did a content analysis that was more on like consumerism and materialism and Super Bowl ads. This one's a little less straightforward, it seems, like working with depression. So how did you try to narrow it down to something that was manageable and measurable as you watch these three films?
Well, specifically my framework looked at other people who have done content analyses, and I just looked at the physically represented actions and just like facial expressions of the characters, and from that's how I coded my movies.
Did you consider anything of the medium, like camera angles or things like that? Yeah,
so the four things that I looked at were emotional, like their emotional reactions, like if they state their emotions. Whoa. There'd be
A light just flickered in the recording area. So does that mean the Babadook is about to attack?
definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a Babadook indicator?
Actually, yeah, it was.
Oh, dang. All right. All right, let's try to finish this real quick before we're all Babadook, if that's a verb.
But yeah, so I looked at emotional, behavioral, cinematic, and contextual and narrative cues. And so emotional was, like I said, like their facial reactions. Behavioral was specifically the things that they did. Cinematic was lighting framework was like the low-key lighting and that kind of stuff. And then the narrative and contextual cues is just kind of like the storyline and like how the plot develops that affects how characters are presented and like their states.
Does anything get better for any of these characters? Should we refer to them by name? I don't know if that's easier to just keep track of who's who, like if we want to. So
we can.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like we have three characters who we're trying to keep track of.
Yeah.
So maybe if we did all right, what's the name of the main character in the Babadook?
Amelia.
Do things get better for Amelia as things
For
go
Amelia,
on?
they do.
They do?
Yeah.
The Babadook goes away?
Yes, the Babadook goes away.
Okay. So in terms of the director symbolism you were talking about before, how did you like use that to lead into a finding of your portrayal of mental illness?
So originally she just kind of like ignored the Babadook's existence, and that's when it kind of like kept attacking, and it kind of shows that she wasn't learning to like cope with her depression. And then by the end of the movie, she ends up learning how to like work better with depression and learns how to live with it and learns how to like properly treat her son, which was the main focus of the movie. And she learns how to become like a proper parental role without like lashing out on him and stuff like that, like she was doing before when she was ignoring all her emotions. And so by the end, they like had a good relationship.
And then Night House. How does that go? Does that work out?
Yes. In the Night House, the main character, her name is Beth. She does end up getting better in the end. She kind of like goes on this rampage of trying to find things because her husband had died. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like what led to the depression. And so she just finds out like a bunch of secrets about him like throughout the entire movie. But by the end, she learns to like understand that, actually at first she tried to join him and she made an attempt.
She made an attempt.
I don't know if I can say that.
She made an attempt to die by suicide?
Yeah. To die the same way her husband did, which was like drowning.
Oh.
But then her friend, which she doesn't see often, but her friend at the end comes in to like save her, and then she drags her out of the water, and she realizes that like that wasn't going to give her like the answers that she wanted, and she learns how to like live with herself and live with what happened to her husband, and she ends up getting like closer to her friends, and she works with those people.
And then so we got Amelia. I'm sorry, Amelia's from the Night House.
Yeah.
Beth's from.
Oh, no, Amelia's from Babadook.
Amelia's from the Babadook. Beth is from the Night House.
Yeah.
What happens in Lights Out?
So in Lights Out, the character with the depression, her name is Sophie, and then like I said, her daughter is Rebecca, and the brother is Martin. So things don't get better for Sophie.
Things don't get better?
No.
Well, spoiler alert. Okay.
Yeah. Similar to the Babadook though, in Lights Out, there's this character, her name is Diana, and it also like externalizes Sophie's depression, and it's kind of similar where like she attacks whenever like Sophie's doing really bad like mentally or like going in a really bad like spot with depression.
Oh, is it a monster-like character?
Yeah, or it's more like human, but like it's still like monster, I guess.
Walk me through it. It's a human monster?
Kind of. Just it's like in the shape of a human. But it's still a monster. It's
humanoid.
Yeah.
As someone who's never seen a Babadook, what does that creature look like?
The Babadook is totally different. It's just like a shadow monster, and it's not really shaped like a human, but it also, at some points, it does take the form of like Beth's ex-husband.
Okay.
Amelia's ex-husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes it takes that form just to like mess with her head and like make her feel like the leaving was her fault. But like that just kind of shows like her depression and like how she was kind of like blaming herself towards that.
Okay, so you have two movies that, sorry if the recording you can vaguely hear major scales being practiced. We are in close proximity to the music room. So you have two movies where it seems like, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that there's this metaphorical externalization of depression through a monster. You know, one's more of a human-like monster. One is I have this image of a Babadook in my head, but I'm probably getting it wrong, but like a shadow monster. How does that fit with, how do these metaphorical like narratives fit with what you were finding in your peer-reviewed literature?
Well, it's kind of similar to what I was looking at, because whenever the main character would be in like a really bad mental state, that's when the corresponding like creature would attack people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of just, I also looked at regulated and dysregulated states. Wait, I don't think I talked about that yet.
Yeah, let's talk about regulated and dysregulated states. So let's define that. Talk about how that appears in the movie. That's a Babadook?
That's the Babadook.
Okay. I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah, it's like a shadow creature.
Yeah, I mean, like the top hat throws me off a little bit. Oh, yeah.
That was just
Why
fancy.
The top hat?
He's just fancy like that.
I guess so. All right.
But yeah, so I also looked at regulated, dysregulated, and neutral states, and that's kind of how I analyzed the overall portrayal of the character with depression, because I only analyzed the characters with depression. I wasn't analyzing like the actions of other people, because that doesn't make sense, I guess.
Well, they were beyond the focus of your work.
Yeah.
So what is a regulated versus a dysregulated state?
So a regulated state is when the character is showing, like, they're showing having emotion, but they're being engaged in regular daily tasks. Like, it doesn't affect them. They're basically, like, doing their daily actions of life without having any problems because of their mental health. And so a dysregulated state is when there's, like, a loss of control with their emotions, where they lash out, they become agitated, they, like, choose to separate themselves, they isolate themselves. Basically, like, there's an interruption in, like, the daily patterns of their life because of their, like, depression.
Is there any character of the three you looked at who seemed the most dysregulated on a regular basis in the film?
Yes, and I actually I had a graph in my...
Oh, okay. All right.
In my paper that kind of shows that. And so in the night house, she was very dysregulated. Like, more often than not, she was showing signs of her daily patterns being disrupted because she was feeling very depressed.
And this was, the night house is Beth.
Yeah.
Is Beth. But she gets better at the end.
Yes, she does.
Is there some, so you've quantified the dysregulation. So Beth is the most dysregulated. Mm-hmm. In terms of numerical expression, is she also the most dysregulated in terms of the portrayal of that dysregulation, or would you say?
No, she's not.
Okay,
actually.
All right. So then, yeah, let's talk about what the numbers lose then.
Well, the portrayals were very different, like, between characters among movie, because, like I said, Beth was kind of, like, isolated, so she didn't really be able to lash out on anyone. She did separate from her friends and she isolated herself, but she wasn't able to, like, lash out on anybody because there wasn't anybody around her. But in, like, the Babadook, she lashed out often at her son. She yelled at him. She, like, withdrew from her parental role. So that was, I'm just saying, like, they were in different ways that they showed that dysregulation.
It seems like, just from what you're saying, again, and not watching the films, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that familial dynamics are a key component to what's happening here, whether it's through the loss of a loved one, like you were talking about in the night house, or I guess that happens as well in the Babadook. I believe she's a widow.
Yeah.
And is that the same in Lights Out too?
In Lights Out, it's different because, like I said, Diana, like the externalized portrayal of her depression, is the one that kills her husband. So it's kind of like the husband got driven away because of her depression.
Okay.
But in the Babadook, it's kind of her husband dying that caused the depression.
Yes. What would you say are the overarching similarities in these portrayals that you, and we'll get into the differences, but like what are the things that are either thematically or it could even be in terms of the camera work or something that's more like cinematic focused like that in across these three films?
So I was going to say, like, just based off of the cues, that almost every time, or no, it was every time that there was a dysregulated scene that was shown, it was right before that they used a cinematic cue to show it. So specifically in the portrayal that horror movies use cinematic cues, like the lighting and the framing and, like, tight framing on a character on their face, or, like, the camera angles, they use that to portray when it...
Like zoom in, okay.
That. Yeah, they use that to portray when a character is about to show, like, that they're dysregulated. And
that was consistent across all three films. Where were there deviancies between the three films that maybe show that this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to depression?
Well, actually, another similarity before
sure.
Is that in all three movies, the behavioral cues were the highest cues found. So that just shows that in the three movies, they represented depression as a behavioral, as it affects, like, them behaviorally. And the one that varied was contextual cues across all three movies.
So what's a contextual cue look like versus a behavioral cue?
So a contextual cue is it's just basically like where it's because of the plot that a character is acting different.
Okay. And what would a behavioral cue be?
A behavioral cue is like, for example, in the Babadook, she ends up like kind of going a little bit, getting really frustrated, and she just starts throwing things at her son, which that's pretty dysregulated. That's not something you would do on a daily basis. And so that's just kind of like a behavioral cue because she's physically like acting out.
But there's nothing in the plot that would have made her do that directly?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Like there's nothing specific that happened right before.
Okay.
So like in Lights Out, for example, Rebecca, she kind of like takes Martin out of Sophie's home. So are you keeping up with the characters? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm keeping up, yeah.
Okay, yes.
I'm taking notes over here, so yeah.
So yeah, Rebecca takes Martin out of Sophie's home, and so this causes Sophie to get really upset because she's like, why are you taking like my son away from me? So she was getting really frustrated at that. So because like that was a contextual moment that led up to the dysregulation of what happened.
Okay. And that's strongest, that type of the plot driving that dysregulation.
Yeah, that varied across films.
That varied across films. I suppose that makes sense because just the plotting and the pacing is going to be different. We only have a few minutes left. So what do you think the biggest takeaways are from your study of these three films? Obviously, we can't generalize about all horror because this is a purpose. This was purposive sampling. Like you selected these three films with a very particular.
Yeah, just because these characters had depression.
Yeah, it's just like so they fit. So you knew. So it obviously that generates some bias, but it's fine. Like for what you're trying to do, you're trying to do a subjective study of like what's in these three movies, and how does it relate to depression portrayal. So what do you think is like the biggest takeaway from this?
I would say that the biggest takeaway is how depression is portrayed in the modern cinema because it affects how it affects public perception, because horror cinema generally relies on exaggerated portrayals of depression and their dysfunction to kind of show audiences what depression is like. And so the fact that there was such a limited amount of regulated states throughout the three movies, it kind of shows that depression obviously is more often than not, it's associated with behavioral breakdowns and dangerous behavior, which is clinically like incorrect. Mm-hmm. And so like because people watch these movies, they start to like understand this as how people with depression would act, which is incorrect. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with like this research.
Yeah, how would you respond to someone who would say something like, movies don't impact how I think about things? I know horror movies are unrealistic. I like you know, like that that type of rebuttal to what you're saying right now.
Well, there's a lot of research that proves that what you watch like in movies
supports. I'm a big fan of supports, not proves.
Okay,
supports the position.
Supports that position then. But specifically like Polgrain, I talked about him in my paper and in my presentation. He analyzed the movie The Joker, and he had individuals he had individuals write down their understanding of the Joker before and after, like the symptoms of the mental illness that he had. I forget what it was. But he had them measure how much they understood about it before and after, and he noticed that like after the movie that it had changed significantly, like what people understood that his mental illness to be about.
So their perceived understanding of his mental illness increased after watching the movie?
No, it just changed.
Oh, it just changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I'm just saying, like it proves that, or it supports the fact that
there you go.
media affects how individuals perceive mental illnesses.
Social science and media studies is very tricky. It's hard to prove anything, but there's support. There's support. You're the second person to bring up the Joker in this podcast this season, which is funny.
Wow.
I didn't think there was going to be that much Joker references. So their perception changed. His wasn't like a quantitative study of, their level of agreement or disagreement with it, whether or not they understood, say depression went up or down. But there's something there. The media that you consume definitely impacts you. That's okay. People can sneeze in the background, and we can move on. Anything else that you would say is a big takeaway from this, or that's probably the main idea?
From the research specifically, I would just say that I did spend so much time like watching these movies, and I actually think it helped because I watched each movie for each of the cues just to make sure like I didn't miss anything. And I feel like sometimes when I went back to rewatch it that I did end up finding more. And like I said, or I didn't say this actually, but I had interliability with a separate coder, two separate coders who also coded the same things, and their findings like aligned with mine pretty well. But I'm just saying, like, I think for anybody who decides to do like a content analysis of movies in the future, that they should really watch those movies a couple times because it helps to not miss anything.
That's a great point. Content analysis typically requires multiple pass-throughs to get it, to limit the subjectivity as you move through it. And that's how we'll wrap it up. How was that different than, how did that compare to like normal school workflow? Like having to go back and analyze something multiple times and it be iterative, see things that you missed. Is that something that was different because of the research process? Or you want to elaborate on that?
I would just say, like, yeah, it was really different because you kind of, like, each time you go back to watch, you kind of have to come back with a fresh mind so you don't have these thoughts in your head about what's going to happen. You have to go back and just watch it entirely like you're watching it for the first time just so you can make sure that you're not missing anything. And I feel like that's not something I usually have to do whenever I've done work for other classes. Yeah,
it's almost you're rewarded for keeping things in your head in the first place and going in with I mean, even I tell students typically, like, know what you're looking for in a source before you read the source. But here, when you're more in exploratory mode, it definitely pays to approach it with a check of, hey, let's try to limit our biases and just go in like we've never seen this. Which is, it's nice to be in explore mode sometimes. We're only human. We're explorers. That's what we do.
Yeah.
All right. Any final words before we end this thing?
Nope.
No? Nothing you want to say to the people?
No.
If someone had to watch one of the three movies, just one, which would you say is the most?
I would say the Babadook.
The most worth their time is the Babadook?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Babadook it up. Thank you, Rebecca.